Funnily enough, people have told me multiple times how brave it is to have gone down this path. But I mean, the truth is, if I wasn't doing this, I think the really terrifying thing would be, what would I do instead? So, kind of avoiding that question has been my life's work.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefy of GhostCultMag.com with another interview, and I am here with James from Wheel. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm really, really good, mate.
Yeah,
And how about you?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. It's getting to the end of the week. The weekend's coming. So I have your metal show last night. This is my life. It's not that bad. Could be
You
lot,
could do a
lot
lot worse, to be
could be
fair.
so, could be so much worse. And invariably sometimes it is. But yeah, really excited to talk with you. I'm a humongous progressive metal nerd. I always have been. I was a progressive rock little kid. Used to run around with like a lot of towels as capes, with knitting needles as magic wands. This is before Harry Potter. A lot of Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who in my childhood. So I like all things out of the box, left field, nerdy. This is our first time chatting. Obviously, we're getting ready to talk about the new album, Charismatic Leaders. Lots to unbox there. So before we do that, let's hear from you, since this is our first chat. Tell us how, sort of the backstory of Wheel.
The short version is I went to university in Northern England, in a place called Scarborough. And one of the guys I went to university with won Idols here in Finland. And he invited me out to play guitar with him on multiple occasions. And within a year, I think I did over 10 flights. So I started thinking, I'm spending all my money on flying. I might as well just move and see where this goes. This was after many, many years of trying to do metal and progressive metal bands in the UK. And it just wasn't happening. I was struggling to find the level of commitment required from other people to kind of take things forward. So I kind of gave up on that, convinced myself that wasn't viable. I moved here. I did the pop thing for a few years, and it just wasn't me. I know that there's a lot of great pop music out there, but I found this particular relationship kind of stifling. It wasn't really about making music. It was a lot about covers and a lot about how things looked rather than how things were in a sense. At least that's how it felt to me. So I became a bit jaded, and I ended up leaving. But luckily for me, the Finnish scene is really small, so I've met some really great freelancers over here, and some conversations with some of the local freelancers are what led to the formation of Wheel. I told them I had these prog metal songs I've been writing since I was a teenager, and I had 20 or 30 of them lying around, and just I said, why don't we have a look at these, and if you think we've got something, we can try and make a recording. And it wasn't really that serious at the time. It was kind of just because I wanted to make something that felt good after not feeling very satisfied doing music for quite some time. And through doing this, I ended up co-producing an EP for a friend of mine, a guy called Tippe Johnson, who used to and still does sing for Apocalyptica, a Finnish cello metal band. And it turns out the other guy who was in the duo was one of the cellists from the band. And after 2 or 3 sessions, we had some good banter going on, and he was asking, why are you here in Finland? So I showed him the demo, and he said, this is great. Can I show our management? And I thought he was talking shit because people say this kind of thing all the time. So I just said, yeah, sure thing, no problem. And turns out he did show the manager, and they flew out to our second ever show in Helsinki. And since then, we've been working really closely with them, with Odyssey Music Management. They're great people and wonderfully straight shooting after all the horror stories I've heard from from execs in the industry. And the music, that's all us, but the business plan has been all them. They've been incredibly committed to this right from day one. And we've got a lot to thank them for regarding the trajectory of our career. And other than that, I'm a bit of a sadist, so I just bust my ass pretty much all the time trying to make this music, and I still make nearly all of it myself. And somehow we've ended up in this position where we're going to be doing headline tours with multiple continents, and people are taking us seriously, which is kind of terrifying, to be honest, but also really, really cool.
I totally relate to that. A lot of people have what we call imposter syndrome. And,
Oh yeah.
even when you reach a peak and you have every reason to feel confident, you still question, do I deserve this? Did I earn this? All these things. There's a lot of great musicians out there. I also came from the era where, like, every pop song was meticulously crafted by whoever wrote it and a small group of people and maybe one producer. And I'm not disparaging any other modern forms of music, but I just find it a little all bland. And I think about like the one hit wonders of the 80s and even the 90s had like an artistry to it and a quality to it that I don't find anymore. But that's my personal taste. There's plenty of great pop music out there still, I'm sure. But a lot of artists could be and a lot of musicians, could be doing that. I want to have a career in music, and if I can't do my own music, I'll do someone else's, and I'll just go through like robotic, like the motions. But I like that you stuck to your guns and followed your passion, which is rare and hard to do. And like you said, you're a sadist, so there's always a grind, whatever you do in this business.
Funnily enough, people have told me multiple times how brave it is to have gone down this path. But I mean, the truth is, if I wasn't doing this, I think the really terrifying thing would be, what would I do instead? So, kind of avoiding that question has been my life's work.
Of course, of course, and we're well familiar with. We've covered Apocalyptica all over the world, on 3 continents, and I've interviewed the band a couple of times, and I'm always very excited. Just coincidentally, did not wear this Metallica shirt on purpose, knowing you were going to mention Apocalyptica with their association with that band, but just pulled the next clean black shirt off the pile. That's my life. Whatever douchey trucker hat is a fresh one that goes, and then whatever clean shirt I have. So let's dial it back for one more second. So you're the main progenitor of the music of the band. What was the first song or artist you ever heard that made you want to make music? Even if it's not metal or it's embarrassing, it's fine. We're just curious about the history of you.
When I was a child, I think I discovered the top 40 when I was about 10 or 11 in the UK, and listened to some truly abysmal pop music from that era. I say abysmal. Some of it's still weirdly quite good, even despite the years of kind of deprogramming that side of my brain. But I think the first thing that really grabbed me and inspired me to play myself was Oasis with What's the Story, Morning Glory. When that album dropped, it was just it was such a great record. And still today, that those songs hold up so well. And my parents had bought me this cheap nylon string guitar that cost about £30. And I was playing in the church group at my school, just always getting in trouble for playing way too loud. And they didn't like me using a pick. They wanted me to use my fingers, so it was a bit quieter. But just I never really looked back. After that, I discovered Nirvana years too late, unfortunately, and quite a long time after Kurt died. But I just got absolutely addicted on the to the kind of noise side of their music. I think they can definitely write a great popular song, but I think the kind of ugly side of it, which was what really stuck out to me, things like Territorial Pissings or Beeswax, those really nasty, noisy tracks. I think that was or Hairspray Queen, that might be the noisiest one of the lot. And that really spoke to me, just this complete chaos coming out of the guitar, like not even really about technical skill, just about this barely contained chaotic expression of just rage. And I still think we've kept quite a lot of that in Wheel. We've definitely got that kind of punky undertone to what we're doing. And then after that, my dad was really into prog when I was growing up, and gradually he exposed me to stuff like Yes and Pink Floyd, of course, and some of the Zeppelin stuff, which was more proggy. And as I got older, when I was about 16, someone showed me Tool, and I was just blown away by how ambitious their structures and arrangements were, and I still am, frankly. I think no one does it quite like they do. And shortly after that, I got into things like Meshuggah and Carnival, and I think it's such a funny term, prog metal, isn't it? Because when you look at these 3 bands and then you add Dream Theater into the mix and you think they all have the same label, it's kind of crazy that they all have the same one, because they're all so extremely different.
That is also inherently prog about it. That's what's prog about it. Like
Very
all these things have a weird, a nexus point, but they're not they're only partially related. By the way, you can do a lot worse in life than telling people I love Oasis or Nirvana. Oasis, even for me, I was in metal bands at the time Oasis broke out, and it was refreshing and incredible. These guys are incredible song makers, and I'm rooting for them. I don't care about the Hall of Fame in America, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I'm hoping they get in just to make the brothers have to like talk and come together, because I'm sure the money that they're offered to reunite is insane. And
I
they
think
don't.
it really shows just how difficult that relationship must be, the fact they haven't rejoined. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell has happened, because a lot of it's been kept out of the public, but
Yeah.
having heard a few stories myself about other bands and how this stuff goes, like there must really be some baggage there for them not to accept that.
Even the Black Crowes brothers got back together. Come on. Come on. Those guys didn't talk for years. Max and Igor Cavalera didn't talk for years. And I love both of them, and we've had many great interviews with both of them. It's tough out there, man. It's tough to be in a band with a family. Family's tough in the first place, and then to have to be in a band with them, I could see why. But
I
also,
think that's really fair. That's very charitable. I think I agree with you.
Well, I'm in a giving mood today, so it's all good.
Clearly.
Thanks for sharing that early origin stuff, and yeah, that makes a lot. I still think Tool is like one of the most unique and special bands. I know that they're so big that people poo-poo them, but like you still, I still listen to some of the earlier stuff that they weren't trying to be so wild. I think some of the early Tool material came off of demos that Maynard had for years. Like Sober is an old song that Maynard wrote in like 88, 89 that he had laying around that they made into a Tool song in 92, 93.
I
But
never knew that. Like
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know much about the
There's
band's history, to be
there
honest.
yeah well yeah May oh look it up. Maynard had many bands, but he had a band called Children of the Anachronistic Dynasty, CAD, also because puns, and clever writers and smart people and people concerned with words. And so there's a demo out there where you hear like the sketches of some early songs from Opiate and Undertow. But anywho, we are not. This is the new Tool biography podcast from James and Keefy. Wheel, man. So this record is so killer, and I know you've been at this almost 10 years now. Maybe longer, actually, if you think about the formative years of a band. What are some of the steps you took along the way as an artist, as a musician, in terms of just how do you get the sound out of your head to get on to, I guess whatever it is now, digital. To digital. How do I get from the kernel of an idea and my inspirations and transmute that into what comes out of you now?
I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'd like to say there's just this magic moment where everything comes together, but to be honest, if it's happened 2 or 3 times in my life, I think normally it's just the grind. You start off with an idea, in the band because I'm doing pretty much all the writing that the system's been. I have loads and loads of ideas which I share in a folder with the other guys, and they pick out kind of their favorite ones they want to develop in the short term, and I'll start building those into full songs. And sometimes that goes really smoothly, like with Disciple. I got super lucky. That whole arrangement took about 2 days. But some of them take 4 or 5 years. Like for Submission, I think the first 3 minutes of that I've had knocking around since 2019. Same with the first couple of minutes of the Freeze. With Empire, the verse riff and the intro part, those 2 bits, I spent I think 4 or 5 months trying to flesh both of those out into 2 separate songs, and it just wasn't happening. Like I just couldn't get to the finish line. And our drummer said in the end, "Have you tried just putting them together? The different time signatures, but the tempo is kind of similar. Maybe that will put something kind of unique on the table." And that was when we kind of had a song, and I was fairly certain it was going to be great. But the last 2 parts, the kind of chorus bit and then the outro riff, that was all I needed to finish at that point. So it was a real grind to get through some of the writing, but it always is. I think because these big structures, particularly in these odd meters, it's all unfamiliar to me too. Like I haven't written a song in this particular groove before, so there's a lot of experimentation and kind of learning the language process before I feel kind of confident enough to get the most out of the ideas themselves. But I think that's just part of it. It's when I think back to when I was working in this pop group, I'd start off in the morning with nothing. By the end of the day, I'd have a produced song with lyrics and backing vocals, you name it. But that's because it's a very well-established language. The structure, you know what it's going to be before you even put pen to paper, really. And I think by comparison, I really want to break all of those norms in Wheel. Like Empire, for example, it doesn't really have a chorus. There's this part that comes once at the end that kind of feels like a chorus, but I mean, it happens once. Does that mean it's still a chorus? It's got this very long, elaborate intro, and I just love kind of messing with the rules because that's what prog has always meant to me, is that you don't really have to follow the handbook and you can really go off piste, and that's okay.
It's funny that historically progressive music and punk were very opposed to each other, but it's almost the same process. Like, how do I throw away the rule book and do whatever to what feels good? What feels good needs to come first. And so, on that note, before we move forward and talk about the tracks a little bit and unpack the record a little, so let's say tomorrow you're a clean slate, this record's done, and you wake up inspired to make a song tomorrow. Do you reach for the piano? Do you reach for a guitar? Do you hum a melody? Do you write a lyric and put a melody to a lyric? What's the first thing you do? Does it
The
change
one thing
everything?
it never is, it's never vocals. That's always the
Okay.
last thing. And actually, we haven't even had the vocals written before we've hit the studio for basically anything we've recorded after our second EP. So it's always been I've really had to wrap the vocals around the track. And even though that makes it much, much more difficult to stretch it out into a song and to kind of do what I want the vocals to do in Wheel, which is kind of smooth out all the rough edges. So you don't need a music degree to decode it, and hopefully you can just enjoy the journey. That's the way it seems to keep going. But to answer your question, I've started it from guitar, I've started it from bass. Sometimes I'll program a drum beat I've got in my head and I'll use that as a building block. But it's normally one of those three, and I think most of all it's guitar.
I had a feeling. You listen to the record, it's like these guys cherish the riff and guitar parts, great guitar
Love a
layers.
good riff.
Yeah, of course. We'll unpack all that in one more second. So let's just talk before we get into the tracks. Charismatic Leaders seems like a bit of a concept. I know, especially after the plague years, they're not. They're over, but now we have the fallout of what's left over to deal with. And it feels to me like, these cults of personality have sprung up around people more than ever. And it's not even, the substance doesn't even matter. It's like, oh, if I have some notoriety, listen to me, I know something, or touch me, I'm special. Who wants to touch me? I saw the Terrence and Phillip movie, Who Wants to Touch Me? But that South Park movie
Great
is 20.
reference.
That South Park movie is 20 years old this year. I feel old.
Shocking.
Anywho, yeah, it's real shocking. But yeah, it seems like there's a loose concept around the record. If you care to elaborate or correct me if I'm wrong.
But you're pretty much right on the money. Like my wife makes YouTube videos for a living, and she does true crime content in Finnish. So we talk very often about the cases she's covering, and often they involve cults. And charismatic leader is historically a technical term to describe the behavior and manipulation style of people who run cults, with superficial charm and keeping you so busy you can't think, and all these other tropes that are just ubiquitous with cults. And like you say, they just pop up everywhere these days. It feels like that playbook has been borrowed from in politics. It's happened in popular culture. Even in brands, you see people defend brands like Apple, for example. If anyone criticizes an Apple product, they'll respond like you've insulted their children. And rather than trying to make this judgmental about people who behave this way, because I think we all have things we behave this way about, whether it's a band we really like or a person we really like, whatever it might be. We take these things that are external and we associate them with our identity, and then we defend them to the death, which if you start picking that apart, it's utterly irrational, even though it's deeply human to do. So, but I had several subject ideas for the lyrics on the record, all of which kind of tied under this umbrella. And initially, I've never worried too much about something being a concept album. I just like the album name to kind of tie most of the songs together. And for 4 of the songs, I think they absolutely tie into this. So it felt like the right title for us.
Right. I felt like there was a little bit of a subtle snark in that also. Like, yeah, they're charismatic, but what else? I promise to our regular listeners, this is not one of my marketing podcasts. I do work in marketing when I'm not here, so I totally understand about the psychology of branding and why people are so loyal. And it actually is the same reason why people are loyal to bands, and they fight to the death over what band they love. I randomly met a couple of guys at karaoke last week, and they were insisting to me that Metallica sucks, by the way, and that Megadeth is a superior band in every way. And I was like, in every way? No. But I do love Megadeth also. Anywho, so many threads to pull back together. Let's go
That's
into
exactly the point. Why has one got to be superior? It's the
yeah.
most
Well,
crazy art. It's nuts to put that into competition.
because people are overly competitive for the wrong reasons, especially some aggro energy from people in this day and age with the internet protecting them. I think a lot of people are keyboard warriors, and their need to be right or vindicated or proven correct or supersedes logic and just good human relations, good natural being. But anywho, let's talk about the track listing of Charismatic Leaders. Whatever you want to share, we really appreciate. And obviously, we talked a little bit about Empire already. It is a banger to open the record. I know you mentioned it having this kind of, gradual intro, but I like that it's kind of a face peeler overall.
Yeah, I think that was the goal. We just wanted it to be short, sharp, and a punch in the gut, and I think that's exactly how it's turned out. But just looking at the time, I'll try and do kind of a brief thing about each one of the tracks. So this one was inspired lyrically by the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News last year, where they lost something unbelievable, like over $700 million for effectively perpetuating a coup as part of their rhetoric. And I was extremely pissed off. There were no consequences for the people who owned the station, the Murdoch Group. They've been able to walk away with effectively clean hands, because that's how this stuff tends to go when it's the most rich and powerful people in the world. I just think maybe we should be more concerned about that as the public, when you think about the amount of influence these people have on our elections and our way of life, how they color the rest of the world through the lens which they show us. So that it was basically this cathartic vent about just how frustrated I am with how they make everyone we disagree with into a caricature, and worse, how we buy into it, even unknowingly. We start to create these avatars of the worst of what we perceive the opposition to be, but they're so exaggerated, they're completely unrealistic, and they kind of prevent any further debate by their nature.
Perfect. No notes. The second track is Yeah, for real. The second track is Porcelain.
Porcelain, that one's ended up being about social norms. I started thinking about how we judge people of the past, and generally we think our morality is superior. And in most respects, I agree. But how much of that is because we have chosen the morality we have, and how much of it is we've grown up in the time we exist in, and we're surrounded by the environment we've grown up in. I started thinking about the future. How will we be viewed? And will it be the same, where we'll be seen as primitive or cruel for some of the views and attitudes we have to other people and to the environment, whatever it might be? It was just kind of a thought experiment, and the unexpected outcome was I just found a lot more empathy for people from the past. How many of them could actually have had an influence on the outcome of any of these things? And the answer is probably not many of them.
Indeed, indeed. The third track is Submission, a rather lengthy boy.
So Submission, I've always been a fan of the Mars Volta, and we wanted to do something with kind of a quick, sort of frenetic 16th vibe to it. And fleshing that out into a song was a massive pain in the arse. I think that might have taken the longest to write out of all of them. I started working on that in 2019, and I finally finished the arrangement in March last year, just at the instrumental. So it was a real uphill battle, but especially the middle part where it goes all utterly left fields. We really did some stuff we haven't done before with this really synthy rubber band bass, and it's very, very heavy throughout. It was very satisfying when it was done, and it's a lot of fun to play, but that was a really difficult puzzle to solve, even by our standards.
I feel you very strongly on that. The fourth track is Saboteur.
That one was just self-flagellation. I was frustrated with the pace of my writing, and I wasn't getting it done as well or as fast as I wanted it to, so I felt like a complete hypocrite and a charlatan, hence the lyrics. But also it's about self-acceptance and forgiveness, and just accepting the limits that we have. And despite the best intention, and no matter how much effort you put into a thing, especially when it's a creative task, there's no guarantee you'll reach any kind of outcome. And if you do reach one, you can't really control how long it will take to get there. So it was about perseverance and self-acceptance in the end.
Indeed. The next track is the aforementioned Disciple.
This one will just get like an elevator pitch. It's two people, one who's in a cult, one who's left the cult, arguing, trying to save each other. And neither one wants to listen to the other one, and both are adamant their way is right.
Welcome to the rest of our lives, friends. That's it. That's it. Caught in the Afterglow is the next to last track.
So that one was that's the first thing you'll see our guitarist has written for the band. I'd written the freeze, and I wanted a kind of an intro part to it, and I've been trying to get him more involved in the writing, so I just kind of threw it at him and said, have at it, see what you can do. And he came up with this really beautiful, subdued, kind of melancholic thing on a 12 string. And when he sent it over, we tweaked the structure a little bit, and then I really went to town with the production, with Marambula samples and synthesizers and things. And I think it's just a breather between these two very dense pieces of music.
Absolutely. And the final track on the album is The Freeze.
The Freeze, I think that's probably the most dynamic journey on the album. It starts off, I started writing it in the winter in Finland, hence the name. And it's just felt very icy with this tremolo guitar part. And I think as it progressed, that's another one that took an extremely long time to get the journey right. I think I went through something like 2 or 3 hours of music in the end that I stripped down to the 10 minutes or so we've ended up with. But I think it's the drumming in it, particularly the drum solo, I think is the best thing Suntory's ever done. He was under unbelievable pressure with the timetable to get that out. And oh shit, did he deliver? I think it's it's remarkably good.
I agree, as is this whole record. Thank you so much for unpacking all that for us. I cannot wait for everybody to hear this. It's been a real breath of fresh air for my spring listening. James of Wheel, thank you so much for hanging out with Ghost Cult. Charismatic Leaders is out on Inside Out Music, the great Inside Out Music label, on May the 3rd. So nice catching up with you and chatting with you and getting to meet you, and I hope we do it again. Perhaps I'll get to see you guys when you come to Northern California.
That sounds great, mate. Reach out and we'll sort you out. Take care, and thanks so much for the interest. Have a good day.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.